Hi there, and thank you all for attending this webinar on apartment EV charging. I'm Tate Benito, and I've been at JetCharge for the last 5.5 years. I'm the apartment sector manager, and so I'm really excited to share some of the insights and key learnings from working in this sector. Here's the agenda of what we'll cover today. I'll start by providing a quick overview of JetCharge and the company's direction as the EV industry prepares for massive expansion. This will then lead us into a discussion on the EV market and opportunities in the strata sector. I'll also provide an overview on key EV charging hardware and software technologies for apartment buildings and discuss the solutions that work best. I'll also introduce our new online partner store aimed at providing easy access to quality EV charging hardware for electrical contractors like yourselves. Finally, we'll close with a 20 to 30 minutes of Q&A, and you can post questions via the chat as we go. We have a few technical experts in attendance who can also provide direct answers in the chat as well. So let me give you a quick introduction to JetCharge and how we arrived where we are today. JetCharge started in 2013 when we were Tesla's EV charger installation partner in Victoria. When you purchased a Tesla vehicle, you also received a JetCharge business card. We were one of the only companies who knew how to install EV chargers at that point in time. Building on our work with Tesla, we then grew to work with almost all the vehicle manufacturers, completing national EV charging rollouts at dealerships for Volvo, Nissan, Jaguar Land Rover, and most recently, Toyota. In 2017, we started focusing on software development because we saw a number of gaps in the market, particularly around EV charging load management. We created our own in-house load management system that is hardware agnostic and which has since been deployed to hundreds of sites across Australia. As the EV market grew, we then began to scale, opening offices across the country and now employing more than 160 staff. This was also assisted by investment by the RACV. Over this journey, we took on everything we could. This is because we started off as one of the only specialists in this space, and so we would receive requests from just about everyone. But this was never the plan. We know that as the EV market accelerates, there will be too much work for the electrical industry. There already is. And so from here on, one of our key focuses is on sharing the knowledge we have gained over the last 11 years. We want to develop strong partnerships with electrical contractors like yourselves and help you all become specialists in EV charging without having to spend 11 years on it. We want to work with you to meet Australia's EV charging needs for the years to come. So let's now take a look at the current state of the EV market and then focus in on the relevance of this to the strata sector. This graph shows you why our focus is shifting to working with the wider electrical industry and sharing our knowledge on EV charging. This is a graph of forecasted EV sales. Currently, we're hovering at around 8% of new vehicle sales being electric. The Australian government has committed to net zero emissions by 2050, and this is legislated. It's literally the law. Australians own vehicles for around 15 years, and so this means that we need to have sold our last internal combustion vehicle by 2035 to hit our 2050 net zero target. This means that in the next 11 years, we need to go from 8% of new vehicle sales to 100% of new vehicle sales being electric. Over the last 11 years, JetCharge has been part of this transition, watching EV sales go from less than 1% to 8%. We've grown our business to 160 employees in this time, but as a country, the largest step is still to come, going from 8% of sales to 100% of sales in roughly the same time frame. We also know that EV charging in Australia lags behind the rest of the world, so we can look to other countries for an indication of what might be to come. In the UK, the largest EV charging provider has installation wait times of 84 days. Imagine having to wait 84 days to get a charger installed at your house. We know that demand will outweigh supply for the electrical industry, and so now is an opportune time to specialise in EV charging, and we want to help you do so quickly. An important question to ask is, where will all these new vehicles be charged? The current data shows that 80% of people charge at home or at work, with the preference being at home. This is because of the added convenience. We already can't build enough public charging stations to keep up with demand, and that demand we have now is only small. So as EV numbers skyrocket, this proportion is likely to skew further in favour of private and at-home charging, and this includes apartment car parks. So focusing a bit more on our main topic, which is EV charging in apartments, another factor on top of the strong preference for at-home charging are the recent changes to the National Construction Code. The latest National Construction Code mandates that all new apartment developments are to be built with EV charging provisions. New developments will need to have an EV backbone infrastructure to support a 7 kilowatt charger in 100% of car spaces. There will need to be dedicated EV charging distribution boards for every 24 car spaces, and a load management system is required in the building from day one to control EV charging power output. These advances with new apartment developments, mixed with a strong desire for EV owners to charge conveniently at home, means that existing apartment blocks will feel the pressure to retrofit EV charging for residents from their buildings. EV charging is set to become an important amenity for apartment residents and a critical factor in apartment resale and rental value. We've already seen scenarios and examples of an apartment owner moving buildings because one building across the street has access to EV charging, whereas their current building didn't have access. Some estimates indicate that access to EV charging may increase the value of an apartment unit by 5 to 10%. So what are the opportunities in the strata market? The biggest one that we see is the opportunity for an early mover advantage. Approximately 50% of all apartment units in Australia, which is around 1.37 million apartment units, are within only 27,000 strata schemes. This means there's a very small pool of buildings that gets you access to a very large pool of customers. If you get your foot in the door early into one of these buildings, there'll be many revenue streams year on year as EV uptake increases in the building. Initial infrastructure deployments can be very large projects, typically in the tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, and these are one-off projects. And if you're able to have a successful infrastructure deployment, if you put in that backbone infrastructure, as we call it, you will likely get called back each time an individual apartment resident wants to install a private EV charger. So you'll start with a large infrastructure project, and then year on year, you'll likely be called back to install the next charger, the next batch of 5 chargers, that sort of thing. EV chargers also require regular servicing and maintenance, and so there's another reason to go back to the building every 6 months, 12 months to perform the maintenance as is required for the chargers. And finally, all apartment buildings also require regular electrical maintenance. And if you're already in a building installing EV chargers, performing EV charger maintenance in a building, there's also a high chance of you picking up a broader electrical maintenance contract for that site. So we see there being a huge opportunity for EV charging work for electrical contractors like yourselves in the apartment space. But we also know that there are a lot of challenges along the way. And speaking from experience, having worked in this space for the last 4 or 5 years, apartment projects can take a long time, and getting decisions made within an apartment setting can be difficult. So in an apartment setting, decisions are made by an owners corporation committee, or we also call that an OC or strata committee, depending on what state you're in. The OC committee is a group of apartment unit owners, and in the building, they're elected each year at an annual general meeting, and the committee is elected to make decisions on behalf of all owners in the building. It's kind of like the government of the building, and that also might be a reason why as to the fact that decision making can be quite slow. The Owners Corporation Committee will typically employ the services of an OC management company and building or facilities management companies, and those companies manage the OC committee's affairs. OC management companies provide more administration services, whereas building managed companies provide day-to-day on-the-ground management for the building, and that specifically relates to coordinating trades on site and those sorts of things. So each year, the committee sets a budget for the upcoming year at their annual general meeting. And if an EV charging project isn't in that budget, then it's highly unlikely that it will proceed that following year. There are alternative ways a project can be approved outside of AGM budgets, but it does mean that the project is more unlikely to go ahead that year. So this means that a really key component to a successful and faster EV charging deployment in an apartment building is early consultation with the owners' corporation committees and their management teams. And this is the best thing to do there is the early consultation to ensure that they get an allocation for an EV charging project in the upcoming budget for their AGM. And talking about the OC management and building management companies that are typically employed by the owners' corporations, they're also a good avenue to access a larger pool of buildings. They often get heaps of questions around EV charging from a number of different buildings that they might manage, and they rarely have the technical knowledge and are very time poor. And so if you make their lives easy, give them the answers they need to go back to their customers and offer a good quality service, they'll likely keep coming back to you for project after project. And so because the decision-making and budgeting process can take such a long time in apartments, we think it's really important to build a strong pipeline of projects so that you have buildings returning to you year after year. And so far, the best way we've seen this done is via a paid site and power audit of the building. This allows you to attend site, inspect the main switchboard, inspect the car park, confirm any spare electrical capacity for EV charging, and also understand any modifications or upgrades to the main switchboard or electrical infrastructure that might be required. And with this information, you can then scope out any suitable EV charging solutions and provide accurate costs to the owners' corporation committee for them to then digest, think about which option is best for them, and then allocate the cost that you provided to their upcoming budget. And so that gets the EV charging project on their radar and allows them to set budget aside for it in the coming year. And if you're able to do this for a large pool of buildings, that means that you'll be building a healthy pipeline of projects. If one or two buildings decide, we don't have room in the budget for it this year, we might do it in 2 or 3 years' time. If you've got a really large pool of buildings that you've given these costs and these reports to, then you can be more secure around how many projects might be coming through your books. Another really important thing we see about offering, say, a site and power audit to start with, especially when you charge for your time, is that it deals with time wasters. There are a lot of buildings out there that are more at the investigation stage and they're not quite ready to even allocate budget or even pay a few $1,000s for a site and power audit. And if they're not even going to pay you a few $1,000s, they're very unlikely to go ahead with an EV charging installation anytime soon. And so you're better off focusing your attention and efforts with buildings that are more serious. So that provides a quick overview of the EV market and the opportunity in the strata sector. And I'll now introduce some of the key EV charging hardware and software that is needed in apartment settings. And so in apartments, there are a number of things that make EV charging a lot more complicated than in a standalone home. And for this reason, technology and particularly software is really key to facilitating scalable and widespread EV charging in apartment settings. So firstly, you'll need a smart charger. Smart chargers are chargers that can be connected to the internet and can be controlled by external software systems. This is key because almost always EV chargers in an apartment setting are connected to the building's common area power supply and not necessarily connected back to the actual electricity meter for the user of the EV charger. And so that means that if it's connected back to the common area power supply, the owners corporation are actually paying for the cost of electricity used at the charger. And so importantly, we need the second item on your screens there, and billing software. And billing softwares are used to collate how much electricity an individual user of a charger has used. And then the software bills that user, collects the funds, and then reimburses the funds back to the owners corporation. And the concept of a user pays approach for EV charging is really important in apartment settings. And so the billing software is critical to facilitating that user pays methodology. Another critical technology, and one that I touched on earlier, and it's absolutely critical for especially retrofitting in apartment settings, is the JetCharge Core load management system. And this is just so critical to enabling scalable EV charging in apartments, because a single EV charger can often draw as much power as an entire apartment unit. And so if you're installing multiple chargers, 10, 20, 30 chargers into a building, you'll quickly run into constraints on how much spare electrical capacity there is in the building. And that's what the JetCharge Core load management system is built for, to protect against exceeding any electrical limitations of the site. And so the JetCharge Core monitors how much spare electrical capacity is available in the building, and then calculates how many EV chargers can be permitted to operate based on that spare capacity. And it can do things like queue a number of chargers, rotate the chargers in operation every hour, so that over a certain period of time, a fair amount of electricity and power is distributed to all EV chargers connected. Another really important piece of software, and this is really important to operating a successful and profitable EV charging business, is an asset management and maintenance software. We've developed our own cloud-based software called Illuminate, and we use this to manage and troubleshoot EV chargers remotely from our offices. And this has been such a huge improvement for our business, because it means that we can really reduce the number of on-site call-outs and resolve issues remotely. And so instead of sending a tech out to site, we can reduce our operating costs by just reviewing the issues of the charger, fault of the charger from an online tool, and resolving those issues from there. The Illuminate software isn't commercially available yet, but there is a really strong push to put this tool in the hands of electrical contractors like yourselves, so that you can achieve the same efficiencies that we have. And finally, underpinning all of this technology is the Open Charge Point Protocol, or OCPP as we call it. And OCPP is the global standard for EV charging communications, and it allows communication between different devices and different software. So from a charger to a cloud-based billing platform to our load management system. And it's really important to select hardware and software that is OCPP compliant, because it allows for that flexibility in hardware selection. For instance, our core load management system is compatible with the largest range of AC and DC charging stations because it runs the OCPP protocol. And so without selecting OCPP hardware and software, you'll be locked into installing only one manufacturer's brand of hardware or software. And we see that being particularly problematic in the apartment space, because you have lots of owners with different vehicle models, different needs, different preferences, and often they want a range of EV charging hardware to choose from when installing in their private car spaces. And it's another really kind of important issue in the apartment space is a building feeling locked into one provider, one electricity provider, or one EV charging manufacturer. They're big issues we see in the apartment space. So now let's get into solutions mode a little bit and talk about what actual EV charging solutions we see being deployed in apartments, and we'll tell you two of our recommended approaches. So from our perspective, there are two key solutions to consider in an apartment setting. And the first and most simplest is to simply install a shared use charger. This is often installed in a visitor car space and connected back to the common area electricity supply. And so, as I mentioned a few slides ago about the importance of a billing software for shared charging, it's absolutely critical to have a smart charger that is set up on a billing software, so that the user of the charger can pay for the electricity cost that they use for a charge session. So for a shared use charger, the owners corporation, they'll pay for the installation, the service, the maintenance, any ongoing software fees for the charging station, but it's up to the end users to pay for the cost of the electricity that they use. And we see shared charging as a great first step to providing EV charging in apartment buildings, but we do get feedback that it often causes headaches for building management. especially in visitor car spaces. A lot of buildings already have enough headaches as is managing visitor car spaces, let alone if there's an EV charger added into those spaces. And especially as EV uptake increases at the building, a shared charger will go some way to providing EV charging, but it really is just a stopgap solution while the building prepares and budgets for a whole of building private EV charging option. And this is what we call an EV backbone. An EV backbone consists of new dedicated EV charging infrastructure spread throughout the entire car park so that any resident, wherever their car space is, can install a charger in their private car space when they purchase an EV. And typically the OC pays for this upgrade to common property, but then leaves it to the individual residents to pay for the connection of an EV charger in their car space back to the centralised EV backbone that the OC have paid for. And these projects, as I said, as I indicated earlier, can be quite large, typically tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And on average, what we see, the project cost to the OC for installing this EV backbone can range from about $800 to $1,500 per apartment unit. And so that means that if you've got a building with 100 apartment units, the cost for the deployment of this EV backbone might range from $80,000 to $150,000. And that's funding that's a project that the OC needs to fund, and that's why it's so critical to get projects like this into OC budgets early. And importantly, this doesn't include the installation of any EV chargers. This is simply the cost to install the new infrastructure throughout the building and to provision all of those car spaces for EV charging. Once that EV backbone is in place, individual apartment owners can then pay another $4,000 to $6,000 normally to install a charger in their private car space. So this slide shows you some of the key components of an EV backbone. The first one being dedicated EV charging distribution boards. And we recommend installing dedicated EV charging distribution boards throughout the car park, aiming to have one within 50 metres of all car spaces. This is because you don't want there to be a unfair end user costs. As I said, the end user costs are normally about $4,000 to $6,000 for a private resident to install a charger. But if one owner is 10 metres away from a distribution board and another owner is 100 metres away from a distribution board, that installation cost can range drastically. And so that's why we see the target of around of having all car spaces within 50 metres of a dedicated EV charging distribution board being the best aim. And so next to each DBEV, as we call them, an EV charging communications rack is installed. And so this is when an EV charger is being installed in a private car space, power and data can be run back to the same point to make an easy installation of that charger. The data circuit is required back to a communications rack because the EV chargers need to be connected to the internet for access to the billing software and the load management system. And we also recommend installing cable tray throughout the car park, and that creates a simple and neat cable pathway from a private car space to the dedicated EV charging distribution board and communications rack, just to keep all those future installations nice and tidy. Because if you just have the DB and the communications rack and start running conduit, especially as EV numbers increase in the building, you'll just have so much conduit running throughout the car park. And finally, an important component is the load management solution, as we've also touched on. And so typically for load management, new power meters are needed to be installed in the main switchboard, and they monitor the power draw of the building and then report that power draw to the load management system. Our JetCharge Core load management system then takes in those inputs, calculates how much spare power there is available for EV charging, and then issues commands out to the EV chargers based on how much spare power is being calculated. And so during periods of high power draw of the building, the load management system might instruct the EV chargers to all ramp down, maybe halve their charge rate. And then if the building demand increases even further, the load management system might even tell all the EV chargers to completely stop operation until power is freed up at the building. And so these are the main components of the EV backbone. As mentioned, these are the components that the OC would have to pay for in that initial project stage. And so with all those car spaces provisioned for EV charging via an EV backbone, apartment residents can then elect to install an EV charger in their private car space. It's a lot more simpler for them once the EV backbone is in place, and they'll just need to purchase a suitable charger, install power and data circuits from the charger in their car space back to the EV backbone, and typically involved in that as well is setting up those chargers on the relevant billing and load management software. And for a lot of car spaces we see don't have suitable mounting solutions, we can also offer a mounting post to achieve a charger installation in those car spaces. I don't think we've ever come across a car space where we couldn't find a solution to install a charger in that space. So they're the components of an EV backbone and private charging solution in an apartment. So now I thought I'd take you through a real world example that we've done. And so here's a case study on Tennyson Reach Apartments, one of our flagship private charging apartment projects. It's a large apartment building in Queensland. There are a total of 215 apartment lots with over 400 car spaces spread across two really large car parks. And so to provide the EV charging access and provision for all car spaces, we needed 21 dedicated EV charging distribution boards to be installed at this building. And that was to achieve that 50, to achieve the requirement of all car spaces being within 50 metres of a distribution board. And so the Owners Corporation of Tennyson Reach, they engaged us on this EV charging backbone project. And it took about 2 years from initial customer engagement to project completion. And so there's kind of a reference of how long some of these projects can take. And a key part of this was early consultation with the committee, where we were able to get the EV charging, an estimate for the EV charging project to them, so that they could put that in budgets for their AGM, get that budget approved at their AGM, and then the next year they were ready to go and actually deploy the project. So the total EV backbone project value for this building was $311,000, and so breaking that down between the 215 lots came to about $1,400 per apartment unit. So just within that $800 to $1,500 range that I spoke of earlier. And so during the EV backbone deployment, we worked with the Owners Corporation to survey and scope how many owners might also want to install an EV charger. And we included that as part of as an addition to the works of the EV backbone. And so initially 20 owners, which was about 10% of the entire building, which was almost 10%, took up this offer and they installed an EV charger in their private car space. And that cost them an additional $4,900. So they all contributed $1,400 via the levies that they paid to the Owners Corporation. And then on top of that, they paid another $4,900 for the private EV charger. We also saw a really high proportion of owners at this building who didn't want an EV charger immediately, but they saw the long-term benefit. They wanted to future-proof their car space. They wanted to add value to their apartment building. And so they decided to install just the wiring, just the power and data, terminated an isolator in their car space. And we saw an additional 70 owners who took up this, and that cost them an extra about $2,600 each. So that was really exciting just to see how many owners were not in need of EV charging immediately, but knew they saw the benefit, they saw the value it would add to their building, and so they jumped on at this early stage because it was cheaper for them to get on board while we were already doing a really large project to get access to cheaper cabling to their car space. And so within a year of this project at Tennyson Reach being completed, we'd actually also had another 6 owners reach out and request an EV charger being installed. Some of these owners were some of the 70 owners that had already installed the wiring, and some of these owners were people who didn't get involved or pay for any wiring during the EV backbone project, or they'd moved in recently and realised that they could get access to an EV charger. And so that was really great to see that, a year later, 6 more owners, because it's a really simple and easy process with the EV backbone in place, 6 more owners have purchased and installed EV chargers. Here are some photos of the Tennyson Reach installation, and the first one on the left there shows just one of the 21 dedicated EV charging distribution boards and communications racks that we had to install throughout the building. The second photo there shows an example of one of those owners who didn't want an EV charger immediately, but thought that future-proofing their car space was a good idea. Maybe they were going to get an EV in 6 months or 2 years' time. And so you can see the cable tray at the top with the power and the data conduit coming off to an isolation point. Final two photos are two photos of our ChargeMate AC charger that's been designed specifically for apartment applications and runs the billing software and is controlled back by the load management system. And so the numbers I've just presented you there really show the opportunity of EV charging retrofits in an apartment building. But I think it's also really important to note that there are a lot of risks associated with such a large deployment of EV chargers. So on that site, we've got 26 chargers, a load management system, a billing software, they're all operating at once. And so that means if anything does go wrong, there could be a high cost to our business to resolve any issues. The slide you can see in front of you now shows a screenshot of the asset management and maintenance platform that I mentioned earlier, our Illuminate software. This allows us to view all the charges on a site like Tennyson Reach at a single glance. It gives us access to error logs from the charges and allows us to perform remote troubleshooting. So as you can see here, there are plenty of green ticks for this site, which is good, means all the charges are online. But if a charger was offline or there was a fault in the charger, that would alert us with a red signal and we'd receive notifications around any chargers that aren't currently functioning as they should be. And so we have actually seen a number of instances at Tennyson Reach where some of the chargers faulted, and instead of incurring really high servicing costs to the building, us having to send technicians out to investigate, troubleshoot, figure out what the issue was, we've been able to resolve these issues quickly and just remotely from our offices. Illuminate is one of the key software products that here at JetCharge that we're developing. And as I mentioned previously, we look forward to offering businesses like yours the efficiency that this Illuminate software product has enabled for us. And hopefully in the future we can share it with you so that you can also achieve those same efficiencies. One thing we have launched recently though, and that is ready to go for you all, is our JetCharge Partner Store, built specifically for electrical contractors, where you can access a lot of the hardware that I've spoken of today. And so I'll give you a quick introduction to the Partner Store now. So as I've said, we've recently launched the JetCharge Partner Store as our avenue to provide high quality EV charging hardware to the electrical contracting industry, to electrical contractors like yourselves. And because we've been doing EV charger installations for the past 11 years, we vetted a lot of all the chargers on the store. We have a huge trust in the chargers that we've selected to on-sell to you. And so you can have confidence that the chargers that you can purchase through the store are chargers that we trust, that we've deployed tens, hundreds of times in the field. And it also means that if you require any support, if you have any questions about the chargers that you're looking at for specific projects of yours, you're actually speaking to experts who understand the products that you're working with. We know these products on the back of our hand. We've seen them day in, day out. And so if you do have any questions or require support on them, we'll be able to provide that to you. So there's a few screenshots of the online store on your screen there. It's really intuitive. It's similar to a usual online shopping experience. And so we'll share some more details if you haven't already seen the store at the end of the webinar as well. In terms of the range on the store, we're constantly growing our range for EV charging hardware and also services on the store. Currently, we've got a wide range of high quality hardware for the residential market. We also offer next day shipping and tiered volume discounts, so you can make a margin on your own projects where you're selling the chargers. As I mentioned, we offer expert support for all the chargers that we sell there. Specifically in relation to apartments, we offer our ChargeMate Smart AC charger, and that's can be ordered with pre-commissioning services that has it set up on billing billing and load management systems. We also recently have put up our JetCharge core load management system that's available for purchase on the store. And in the coming weeks, we'll also be releasing DC charging options on the store as well. And so if you haven't already set up an account or haven't seen the store at all, we'll definitely share a link to you at the end of this webinar, so you can have a browse and see if there are any products there that might be a good fit for any EV charging projects that you have coming up. Thank you for listening to this webinar. And yeah, we really hope this has been a useful overview of JetCharge, our business, and how we operate in the apartment space and how we can work together in the apartment space. And yeah, we look forward to helping you expand your business with access to high quality EV charging hardware through the store, and any EV charging services you may need, and importantly, any support and expertise and knowledge sharing that we can provide. That's all from my end for the presentation. But yeah, we should have just about 20 minutes now for any questions. I hope Ishan will have been answering any questions that might have come through the chat, but please use the raise hand icon if you have any questions, and we'll unmute you and look forward to hearing from you.
Hey Tate, I have a quick question for you as well. So this is regarding over-the-air updates, and from your experience, how many sites have you had where we've updated software for core and the chargers and your experience? Or at the moment, have you seen any sites where we've had to update the firmware? I've seen commercial sites, so I can talk about commercial charging, but for class 2 buildings, just need to know if you've had any experience.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, yeah, we have performed firmware updates over the air. So via that Illuminate platform that I shared some information on, we're able to remotely update firmware. And yeah, that's definitely been done in apartment settings, Ishan.
Customer to
Sorry, Tate, another question for you. We had someone asking about the maintenance plan. So can you please talk about the current maintenance offering that we have? Or do you recommend a maintenance plan?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, good question. And yeah, definitely, we recommend EV charger maintenance for any application. And so, yeah, if you are installing EV chargers, it's definitely a good idea to also offer maintenance with the EV charger. And yeah, gives you a good reason to go back, keep contact with that customer, keep nurturing that relationship to see if there are more EV charger installations for the future, and you know that just regular servicing gets you an extra revenue stream. But yeah, the EV chargers require maintenance, so that's definitely a great inclusion. The maintenance software we use, yeah, is that Illuminate software, and that is what we use to monitor EV chargers. So if there is a fault in a charger, instead of us getting a call from a customer and saying, hey, our charger isn't working, and us rushing out to site, first we'll do some remote troubleshooting and see if we can resolve the issue remotely, because there are a lot of costs incurred to our business if we send someone out to site and we find it's a simple software or user error. And so, yeah, we've really found a lot of efficiencies and cost-saving mechanisms through that software. And yeah, stay tuned, because it's certainly something that we want to release to electrical contractors like yourselves.
Hey, there's a question on B2G, and I can take that for you. So for B2G, it's an interesting space, right? Because 4777.2 came out, and we've been involved in the update of 4777. We did work on the Quasar, certifying the Quasar, talking to each DNSPs, and because there were a few barriers with CEC, it was pretty hard to penetrate that market apart from SA. So in SA, we did Flinders Uni, we did home trials, we worked with Amber. And what we realized was that the Gen 1 Quasar hardware was really basic for what the market needs. So VPP control, talking to a backend, wanting to do export, dynamic export was really limited. It was pretty basic. So there was the hardware limitation, and the hardware was super expensive as well. At the moment, currently, no hardware that can do V2G with CCS2 vehicles. We're still looking at potential hardware. At the moment, the only update I have is that the standard's updated. It should make European or international players in the market who are working on CCS2 vehicle-to-grid chargers a bit more compelling to come into our space. And once they have chargers there, I'm sure we'll work with a few of them, we'll certify them, and we'll offer them to the market. So it's a really cool evolving space. But 2024 onwards or 2025 onwards, we're going to see some traction. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any other questions? And also, you should have all received a poll it should have flashed up on your screen asking which further topics you might be interested in hearing more about, because we kind of touched lightly on a number of topics today. But if you'd like more detailed information and a deeper dive into any of them, we'd love to know which topics would be most valuable for another session. But yeah, any other questions that we can help with?
I think Philip O'Neill has a question, so we're going to unmute you and everything.
Thanks.
Yep. Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you, Phil. Thanks.
Yes, we can.
Cool. I just had a question on the DB boards. Say for that project you did in Queensland, I think you said there was 32 DB boards or something like that.
Yeah, 21 on that one, but yep.
Oh, 21, sorry. Now, do you have the core load management system? Does that exist in each of the DB boards?
Yeah, really good question, Phil. So our core load management system is actually, for that project, is actually centralized. So it's actually located at the main switch room. And then each distribution board just has a communications cabinet next to it and is then connected back. The communications cabinet is connected back to the load management system in the main switchboard. So for that project, we didn't have load management in every distribution board, but we are currently in the process of releasing a distribution board with our load management system inbuilt in it. And that's kind of more targeted to national construction code requirements, which I spoke of earlier, that require a distribution board for every 24 car spaces, inclusive of load management in those boards. But basically, our load management system is flexible, such that you could put in a central hub and then spread out to all the distribution boards, or you could also have it in every single distribution board.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good. Thanks for the answer.
Good question.
Yep. Tate, there was another question. Is ongoing maintenance of a charger a mandated requirement? And if so, how often? I'll take this one. So maintenance is covered in Appendix P, and it's not a mandated requirement. It's informative. However, if it's in AS3000, then we do take it as a normative reference. We want to follow it. Now, in terms of Class 2 buildings like apartments, annual maintenance is recommended. And if the manufacturer recommends any maintenance plans or preventative maintenance plans, that needs to be followed. In Class 3 or in commercial space, let's look at DC charging. Most manufacturers will have a maintenance plan, a preventative maintenance plan, a spare part replacement plan, which needs to be followed. They'll have timings, because chargers in the DC chargers, they do get used. AC, it's just ongoing maintenance once a year, making sure that they're working. There's no bugs or insects inside them. And if they're in an outdoor area, just making them clean and just checking the components. So maintenance also will be updated in the next iteration of AS3000. So we'll provide feedback to the AS3000 committee members who are working on updating the standard, and maintenance will be covered. It'll be a bit more clearer on what's required, because at the moment it's not clear in the standard. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Sean.
There was another question on the max number of charges a single core unit can handle. That's a tricky one, right? Because we've got different configurations of core, different CPUs within core, and that's something that's typically engineered and designed. However, depending on the number of switch and the network design, we recommend we can manage up to 1,000 endpoints. Now, again, 1,000 endpoints is quite a lot for one centralized system. So there's always unique challenges involved in implementing core, and Tate can talk about how many he's gone, his maximum number of charges he's got in a core unit. But let's look at the biggest core unit that we have, which is a core max. Inside core max, we have 24. We have two 24-way pole network switches, and then that can be expanded. So typically, we will have a network architecture. We'll expand the networking side, have comms racks, and then load manage the charges. So again, Tate, your area of expertise, what's the maximum number you've gone? But yeah, that's a question for you, and it depends on the design.
Yeah, thanks, Nishan. And yeah, that's spot on. Depends on the design. But with the right network architecture, yeah, we advertise that it can manage 1,000 endpoint, so 1,000 EV charges. In terms of what we've actually seen, that case study I showed you earlier, that Tennyson Reach has 26 charge points that are managed by the load management system. But I believe the largest deployment we've done in an apartment setting is a project in WA that was a new construction project where there are 87 charge mates installed, all managed by the one load management system. And so far from what we've seen, the behaviour of that site has been as expected, and the load management system manages the output of those 87 charges as we would expect. So yeah, we're confident we can get to 1,000, and yeah, that's helpful.
Question. There's a couple more questions. Really good ones. Keep them coming. Do we see apartments DC rapid charging or AC 7 kilowatt or 22 is fine? So with NCC, the NCC specifies a number of kilowatt hours delivered over a period of time, and that can be done quite easily with a 7 kilowatt charger. Hence why number of plugs is more important in an apartment space over the power delivered per plug. And also with DC charging, with rapid DC charging, it can be a bit complex to manage and making sure that the bays are available for those who need. So 7 kilowatt charging, or even 22 kilowatts, a bit high, but 7 kilowatt charging is what we typically recommend. In terms of the yearly maintenance done by someone who isn't a technician, it can't be done. It needs to be done by an electrician. You can do the cleaning, making sure that the chargers are clean, like a normal visual inspection, but electrical inspections need to be done by technicians. The third question was, are ABB chargers integrated in core? So a really good question. So we tried integrating ABB, AC, DC. So they've got the Terra AC, they've got the Terra DC, the Terra 12494s. What ABB did like is how we were ramping the chargers up and down. So again, this is going into a bit more technical space, but they weren't happy with the ramping of our core management system, because when there's no electricity available, when there's less electricity available, we have to ramp them down. So because of that ramping issues, again, we're still working with ABB, ongoing evolving space, but the AC chargers unfortunately don't work with core, and the DC some do. And again, that's something that we're working with ABB. Having an agnostic product is difficult, like the DALI example that I gave, and each manufacturer have their own set of OCPP messages. So yeah, and we need to listen to the manufacturers because we don't want to damage their chargers. I think that's all about it, and I'll start typing. I thought it was easier to just jump on.
Thanks, Nishan. I thought I saw a hand go up as well. Maybe not, but
I think that hand got lowered down.
no worries.
Right. So hopefully we've answered that person's question as well. Oh, okay. Also, wrong button press. All good. So, any last questions before we wrap up?
Questions?
It has been some very, very good questions coming in. And if you all are still, because this is a big presentation, I'm sure you all are still kind of processing and all of that. But if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to come and reach out to us. You can reach us through our jetcharge.com page, our hotlines there. And if you like to check out any hardware for apartment installs, please be sure to check out our partner store. We have dropped the link in the chat as well. And I think if you all have not completed the poll on what you would like to hear next in our next webinar, apartment-related webinar, because right now, yes, while Tate has shared so much information, it can get so much more deeper as well. Like we can go so much deeper with apartments and so much more information to share. So if you like that, please vote, and then we can know what to prepare for our next webinar. And if that's all fine, we will see you all soon in next one.
Right.
Oh, yes. And we will work, yes, and we will send over a recording of this. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
Thanks everyone for attending, and hope you got some value and some interesting learnings out of that. Thanks very much.